my friends, Simon Miller here, and yes, I have seen The Batman, and by the time you've seen this video, maybe you've seen it too. But right now, there's not a lot of people I can talk to about it with, because again, it's not out in the wild just yet, and there are so many reveals in this movie, when you do see them, you just want to run out into the street and talk about them. Given that if I do that, I'm going to get arrested and probably annoy a lot of people, I just thought I'd do it here on YouTube instead, so here is 8 The Batman reveals you ain't gonna believe. Number 8, Falcone is Catwoman's dad. Now, if you're super into the comics, this one is going to be nothing new, but seeing it actually play out on the big screen made me feel all warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum, because one of the earliest reveals you do get in The Batman is Selina Kyle opening up to Batman and saying, hey, the reason you saw me stealing a bunch of money from Carmine Falcone is because he's my daddy. It's a really smart choice because later on in the movie, you see Selina Kyle ready to shoot Carmine right in the face, but Batman obviously stops her because he's not into that. But the absolute coolest part is that it starts taking these major characters and linking them together. And director Matt Reeves seems enjoying that a lot because even later on when the Riddler does kill Falcone, you still have his offspring in the franchise who's not properly dead. It also makes the relationship between Batman and Selina Kyle really interesting because number 7, Falcone maybe, just maybe, killed Thomas and Martha Wayne. Yep, that is right. It is strongly hinted throughout The Batman that Carmine is responsible for killing Batman's parents, which means Selina Kyle, the person that Bruce Wayne is basically in love with, is the child of the person that may have killed his parents, which turned him into Batman. Now sit down and just get your head around that. Now don't get me wrong, because the movie goes on a right roller coaster with this, because for a good 15 to 20 minutes, it actually tells you, no, it was Salvatore Maroni, before once again coming back to Carmine Falcone. Because basically, after Falcone tells this to Bruce Wayne, he goes to visit Alfred, he's like, damn it, Alfred, why didn't you tell me this? And Alfred's all like, that's not what happened, let me tell you the entire story, and while nobody can be 100% sure, I'm pretty sure it was him. Now look, just to underline it and make it very clear, the Batman is very ambiguous with this, but there must have been a reason to do it, so I'm going to take it as read, and when we get to the eventual sequel, I hope we jump into this even more, because it's so damn intriguing. And also it ties into number 6, Thomas Wayne hired Falcone. Yep, we continue to link it all together, so brace yourself. For you see, when Thomas Wayne was running for mayor, a no good reporter found out that his wife Martha had spent time in Arkham Asylum, and Tom's all like, well, I don't want that getting out into the press. I need somebody to shut this reporter up. So in a really dumb move, he turned to Carmine Falcone. Now, of course, Thomas doesn't want anyone to be killed, but Falcone realized, well, if I do that, I'll finally have one over Thomas Wayne. So he does murder this dude, and when Tom does find out, he can't believe it and decides, you know what, I need to go and talk to the police. And of course, what happens on that fateful night when he does go to talk to the cops? Thomas and Martha are murdered, and the whole time the film is shouting, he did it, but maybe he didn't do it, you gotta make up your own mind. I think it's a lot more fascinating if you do leave it that way, because again, we've already talked about it, let's talk about it again. Batman has the chance to stop Selina Kyle killing Carmine, but he doesn't. Even in the back of his brain, he's probably going, wait, that's the guy that killed my parents? My word, the depth you can swim around in this. It's heavy stuff, which gives this version of The Dark Knight a real edge, but also goes to show that Thomas Wayne had weaknesses, and of course, it's his family. Excuse me, I have something in my eye. And just to be a little bit stereotypical, it's more evidence that you don't want to treat things as black and white, because shades of grey are far better than that. Number 5, Alfred dies. Kinda. Right, seriously, maybe I'm an idiot, but when Alfred decides to open a letter addressed to Bruce Wayne from the Riddler and it explodes in his face and you see him go flying across the room, I actually thought to myself, flub me sideways, they've killed off Alfred. Now I was livid because 1, Andy Serkis doesn't actually get much time in this movie, so I was like, okay, well we're gonna explore him more in the sequel, but also 2, it's Alfred. You don't do that to Alfred. But then you cut to a later scene and it turns out he's okay. Now that is a little bit of a tease because fire literally ravages his body, so how he did survive, I don't know. But once again, it ties into this journey that Bruce Wayne / Batman goes on throughout the entire film. Because up to this point, Bruce doesn't really understand the importance of Alfred, but when he almost loses him, he's like, oh my gosh, well I can't go through that again because when I lost someone before, I mean, look at me, I turned into a giant bat. This is the kind of Batman lore that I do love, and it's also at this point when Alfred is hooked up to hospital machines that Bruce is still going, why didn't you tell me Salvatore Maroni killed my parents? And Alfred tells him his version of events. and afterwards you're just going to go need to lay down, because that is a lot of information coming right at your face. Number 4, Martha Wayne's illness. This has already come up in the conversation, but when it is dropped in the movie, it does feel like a massive reveal that yes, Martha Wayne spent time in Arkham Asylum from undisclosed mental illness. And we never let into exactly what this is, so my word, we have to get into that into the future. But not only does it tie into Bruce Wayne, who of course is going through his own struggles, but it must have been pretty bad because again, when Thomas Wayne is running for mayor, he doesn't want this to get out to the press because he's so worried about what that would do to his wife. So there's far more questions than answers, but much like they did with Thomas Wayne, this makes Martha such a more interesting character than I went out one day and somebody shot me in the head. The Batman also does a top job in how it spills all this info out because it just comes at you like lightning rods and leaves you actually feeling a little bit stunned. Number 3, the Renewal is used to destroy Gotham. Mostly because Bruce wants nothing to do with it. First mistake. For those that may not know too, the Renewal project was set up by Thomas Wayne in order to try and help Gotham. It was basically this massive trust fund that he thought the city could tap into and eventually bring it back to prominence. After his murder though, people like Carmine Falcone and other scum of the earth took advantage of it, and that is how Gotham City eventually becomes the crime capital of the world. As we know though, Bruce wants nothing to do with this and would rather spend his time running around as if he is a bat, but when he finds out that the Riddler wants him dead because the Riddler himself was an orphan and bought into the Renewal project like, oh my gosh, this is going to save me, and then realized it didn't, he's like, wait a minute, if I had made sure I also put time into being Bruce Wayne, maybe I would have realized this and I could have stopped it. And if you want a too long didn't read version, you could argue it as Batman spends all this time trying to clear up a mess that Bruce Wayne kind of created. It ties into everything we've already mentioned though, because nobody in this movie is 100% good. They have flaws, they have foibles, they can be a little bit of a dick. Without that though, we don't get to have these kind of conversations. So once again, it's a massive tick. Number 2, the Riddler is inspired by Batman. This is something that The Dark Knight also touched upon, but it's made far more clear cut here because when the Riddler is finally face to face with Batman, he basically says, "Thanks for helping me, Chief." And Bats is like, what are you talking about? It's why the Riddler leaves Batman letters after every single killing, because while he has the brains, he doesn't have the brawn. He needed the Caped Crusader and he falls into that because do not forget it is Batman that brings Carmine Falcone into the light. And that's when the Riddler shoots him. It also allows the Batman to kind of present them both as equals too, because Bruce Wayne is inexperienced, and this is the first time he realizes, oh, wait a minute, me running around like this is going to inspire others, and flub me, this guy's done it terribly. So it's classic copyright killer stuff, but if you told me that in this scene, you kind of understood more where the Riddler was coming from than the Batman, I mean, I'd be a little bit scared, but I'd also kind of understand. Number 1, the Joker is in it. Maybe. So I've only seen the Batman once, and of course I am going to see it again and again and again and again. So if I am wrong here, you'll have to forgive me. But also, if I am incorrect, something has gone horribly wrong with my brain. But after the Riddler has been locked up in Arkham and starts a conversation with the dude in the cell next to him, this person not only has like scars that are formed into a smile, he not only has a high-pitched laugh, but he keeps talking about clowns. So we can debate that until the cows come home, but if that isn't the Joker, what the hell is the Batman doing? So as far as I'm concerned, this is DC's next attempt at rebooting the Crown Prince of Gotham, and there were a load of rumors out there that Barry Keoghan was meant to be in this role, and while you don't see his face properly because it's kind of obstructed by the door, it did look a little bit like him. It also means in the Batman 2, we may get the Riddler, the Joker, and the Penguin all running around, and you can bet your ass I am excited about that. Have any thoughts about the Batman either before or after you see it? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com where we have a ton of the Batman articles. We also have loads here on the YouTube channel too. And come give us your thoughts on social media. We love to hear them. My name is Simon for What Culture. Thank you for joining me as always. And I've got about 4 or 5 days of recording this until I can see this movie again, and I'm already pumped.